October 5th, 1247. It has been a day since I returned. I gave myself time to process and even now struggle to find all the words. I laid down to sleep last recording and rested for a short while. When I felt and heard loud music and energy around me, I shot up to find myself in completely new settings. I was no longer on the asteroid. I found myself half laying on a padded bench, loud music blaring, and the energy of a party. Conversations, laughter, dancing, movement. I was in a muffled atrium. A couple of aliens in a haze, or sleep, were with me. One was covered in scales, a humanoid, sat on the ground, weaving their head around something I couldn't see. Another was a large blob shape that occupied space across from me, semi-transparent, with a heavy face. They made bubbling sounds, over very evident snoring. The ground was littered in various containers and capsules, hand-sized and thrown in scattered piles. I rose up to my feet, concerned about my new whereabouts, and cautious. I wanted to interact with my new neighbors. However, the blob would not respond, and the scaled alien followed me with their eyes, both seeing me and not at the same time, totally unresponsive to my interactions. Despite my best efforts and eagerness, I gave up trying to interact with them, pushed my way past a pair of double swinging doors into the edge of where all the action was taking place. Outside, I found myself in a long hallway that stretched far in both directions. More double doors connected to the hallway and port windows lined the opposite wall, a backdrop of stars just on the other end. I walk up to the window nearest to me and put my hand on it. Just where was I? While trying to find my senses, a heavy hand dropped onto my shoulder, nearly having me jump out of my own skin.
Sleep it off already? You need more.
I turned to see a large humanoid alien, tall, red, three-fingered, protrusions on the sides of its head, small yellow eyes, a bright white smile, in a white cut-off shirt. I stumbled for words. This was not what I expected my second alien conversation to be like. Before long, I bumbled into, "You speak English?"
What are you talking about?
How are we communicating? You're speaking clear English. Is that also your language where you come from?
Ha! You're a riot, man. You got on board with everyone and spoke all our languages. Maybe you're still good. You can always be better. Come back with us.
Us? And with that exchange, he moved me around by my shoulder and guided me through another set of doors, right into a massive room with a skylight. Inside, this was the heart of all the commotion. This was a massive dance party, filled with so many different life forms I couldn't wrap my head around them. Tall, slender, spider-like beings, they rose up towards the ceiling, bumping up and down to the music in groups. Gaseous beings floated around, refracting light as it moved and changed colors across the ceiling, pulsing and bouncing. An absolutely massive purple alien sat in the corner, taking up at least a fifth of the room, tentacles raised and cheering through a bird-like beak. How'd they even squeeze them in here? Large bird-like creatures flew around in a circle above us, spinning and dancing. My eyes were pulled into view as my new acquaintance walked out to the floor, waving me to follow into a sea of dancing, hollering, laughing aliens. There were quite a few humanoid ones in differing spectrums of colors and attachments. Claws, beaks, scales, tentacles, just to name a few. Most were clutching in some form one of the canisters I saw earlier, cheering and tossing spent ones wherever they could. He walked over and put both arms around a group of others who greeted him and cheered. He pointed over at me and they all waved me over. This was a lot to take in. I was just sleeping and now I'm here? My dreams made into reality, and in the most extreme of ways. There was so much I wanted to talk about and explore. I took a deep breath and swallowed. Everything starts with one step at a time. Just like Armstrong, this was the first step. My first step. And so I took it. I made my way to the dance floor and my new apparent acquaintances.
See? There he is!
The red guy from earlier joked. The group cheered and drank from their canisters, putting them up to their faces and pushing the canisters towards them, compressing it. One in retro 70s colors tossed theirs and left for another. "It's about time," a female voice called out. They were tall and stout, wide like a football player without a neck. "I was so sure you were able to hang out too."
Ha! You said the same thing about the bugs. Challenged that queen of theirs to a drink-off.
"I sure did, and she totally lost. That whole hive mind they've got made the whole group pass out. That was the best."
Could you imagine? Forget that. Queens are lame.
They all laughed. I asked what the apparent party was for, laughing that I had forgotten, and each of them turned to me, no longer laughing.
You got on board the EOL and don't even remember?
I smiled and shrugged. Had too much, maybe? "Or not enough," the retro alien exclaimed as they returned back, handing me a canister. "Drink up. Some of us want to forget about it. I'm with you there." We clanked canisters and they drank, while the group eyed me, holding onto mine. Now, I didn't want to do it. I really didn't. I had no idea what this was or how it would react with my body. Was this really still in the name of blazing new ground? I stared at my canister and glanced up to notice the smiles were fading quick. With another one small step, I mimicked the group, compressing the canister against my mouth and drinking. It was similar to carbonated water, but it was horrendously bitter. It went down, and I pulled it away from my face, giving a thumbs up. Everyone cheered. Is this what parties back home were like? The large alien wrapped around the red one and dragged him off to dance. Two others were pulled away by other friends right as I turned to look. That left me alone with the retro one. They were slender, with very angular cuts into their figure, kind of like a stand-up cutout almost. With a dress of brown and white, they had yellow adornments and jewelry, pink skin, and they had two sets of eyes with two antennae at their forehead. While visually striking, their form was off, as if their dimensions were slanted. "So, what kind of things are you into? Are you all from the same planet?" They cast me a glare. "Does any of that matter at this point?" "Can't it?" I asked. I was genuinely confused. They huffed and pushed me out back to the hallway. "It's loud in there." It was still loud out here, but it was a little quieter. "So tell me more about yourself, now that we're in a quieter place." "You're loud," they responded, leaning against one of the windows and gazing out. "And no, I don't think so." Was it me at this point? This was going pretty terribly. None of them wanted to talk and engage in any meaningful conversation. I was stunned. I went quiet, and my mind started racing. "Nobody here has anything they want to share. We're all here for one reason or another. That includes you, too." They continued to drink. Look, I genuinely don't remember getting on board. I just kind of woke up here. I mean, not to say I'm not happy to be with you and all. There's so many fascinating people here. "You're a real buzzkid, dude," they said as they finished their drink. "I didn't board to get asked questions. If you just woke up here, it might be best to go back to sleep. The EOL is projected to make contact soon. Might want to while you still have time." There's that abbreviation again. What does EOL stand for? What are we making contact with? They sighed and pulled away from the wall. Nah, you can find that out from someone else. The only questions I'm into answering tonight are for another one? They grabbed my canister and walked back to the doors as they returned back inside, leaving me to my own inquiries. What a jerk! You'd think that some simple explanation would suffice. I'm a scientist. I'm not some far flung frat boy. What is this even? I stormed off and went through another set of doors. Inside, almost as if by some sort of cosmic humor, there was a commotion of intermingling going on. I quickly left. That's not the kind of science I'm looking to investigate. Red faced, I quickly shuffled down the hall, distancing myself as far as I could. There were many different rooms that I would periodically check in on, and the retro alien was correct. None of these others would answer any questions I had. They were all way more interested in whatever activity they were doing, or they were standoffish otherwise. It wasn't all heavy partying. Some were doing acts that we would do back home recreationally. Things like movies, reading, eating, stand up, games, hobby acts, just to name a few. My prodding and interest in any activities were quickly met with hostility, and I eventually found myself exhausted from even walking. I felt completely defeated. I realized looking back down the hall that I had made my way from one end to the other. It was a strange sight to behold, almost like some kind of a liminal space, if it weren't for the overabundance of noise. I decided to find a place to sit and rest for a moment before I continued my search. This couldn't be the end all be all. A chance like this literally comes once in a lifetime. I'll just catch my breath and return again. They all spoke English. What a crazy turn of events. Does this happen to be a universal language? If anything, maybe the original group might be more receptive now. I opened the last set of double doors to find an atrium a lot like the first that I had come to in. It was relatively untouched, save for a single alien sitting at the bench, hands against their face. I could have been wrong, but it sounded a lot like sobbing. The lone individual on this craft to not be enjoying themselves or mingling to some form of degree. I approached and I raised a hand. Sorry, do you mind if I take the seat over here? Shocked, having not heard me come in, they wiped their face and nodded. I sat down and exhaled. There was a prolonged silence. This alien, should I still be calling them that at this point? Anyway, this person. Yeah, that has a better ring to it here. This person was humanoid, with a blue-gray skin, kind of wrinkly, I suppose, four-fingered, with bobs on their joints, black hair, something that wasn't entirely common at this point. They had large, wide eyes that were violet, dressed in regular clothes as you might expect back home. They stood out, probably more because they were a new experience for myself, but otherwise they didn't really make much of an impact like the others had. At this point, I realized I may have been staring, and I broke the silence to not be so much of a creep. It's one heck of a party in there, isn't it? They did not return my gaze, and in a country accent responded, I suppose. You aren't interacting with the others. You must be tired too. I laughed. No, not up for any of that. This was actually the furthest I had gotten with anyone else as far as communicating goes. Well, how about this then? I extended my hand towards them. My name is Sam, and it's nice to meet you. Nice. They looked my way, extending and grasping my hand. I go by Nathaniel. We shook hands, me smiling, though they were not. To be honest with you, Nathaniel, this is the first actual conversation I've had with anyone here. You reckon so? I can see it. This ship wasn't exactly for the talking kind. Why is that? I've picked up that no one really wants to talk. There's also the abbreviation, EOL. I don't even know exactly how I got here. How you got here? feller, I sure hope you're mistaken. You couldn't have picked a worse situation to be in. Is that so? Well, could you enlighten me a little? He stared at me for a moment, looking into my eyes. Well, I'll be. I sure pity you, Sam. I'm sorry you're here with the rest of us. You done boarded the end of line. Everyone here chose to be here. The end of line? Is that in reference to how buses and trains back home would wrap up service? That's kind of an ominous name, isn't it? What's at the end of the line exactly? A black hole, Sam. A black hole? You can't be serious. There must be tens of thousands of others in here. There's a small city's worth. They can't all be aware of this. Everyone here knows what's at the end. Maybe the little ones don't, but their parents sure do. I took a moment to process this. This had to be some kind of joke. I met families. There was a party that I participated in. No one seemed to be aware of this. They couldn't, possibly. You're playing a mean joke. No one I passed from the bow to the stern looked even remotely aware of this. How could they be so oblivious? You must not be from our own solar system, Sam. This is the way things are done here. All of us here are poor. The massive corporation, June, owns everything in our system. They bought us all out of the planets and own everything, from the dirt on the surface to those who get born on it, to the patents that keep our zones from collapsing, to the work we're all forced to do that destroy it in the first place. We're all kept in debt that we can never get out of. We work and live for the company, and then we die when we're no longer of use to them. I didn't know what to say. Well, that's horrifically dystopian. Completely. They send these ships out once they have them full of those who can't or won't work. They get to enjoy the freedom and such that the rich and powerful do till we reach our destination, where we're all disposed of. That doesn't seem like a sound business plan on their end, does it? I mean, why would they send bodies out here and spend all this money? Don't you think you could be wrong? There's a massive black hole that's passing right through our system. We weren't even aware it was in our system till our gamma colony planet just disappeared out of nowhere. They were unable to even send out a distress beacon. Moves slow, but its effects reach far. We take to these ships to enjoy our lives for once. June gets to monitor where the black hole is within the system, and as you're probably already aware, black holes are only visible when they eat. I guess it's one of those win-wins for both parties. I sat with this for a moment. What an incredibly bleak life these people had if they would willingly decide this was better. And then it struck me, as if it hadn't already, but right then, it really sank in. I was on the ship too. Panic started to rise in my chest, and I began to hyperventilate. For us, this was a scientific discovery for the records, one that I wouldn't survive to tell the tale of. Nathaniel put a hand on my shoulder. What's done is done now, Sam. There's no stops, no do-overs. You really should go enjoy what small time we have left. There was a metallic groan as I felt the entire ship just displaced, like grabbed by some powerful force. I looked up, having been distracted by all this conversation. Right through the transparent glass, the bizarre distortion of space and gravity came into view. A dark abyss loomed ahead, lit up by a folding ring of light, distorting in abstract patterns and movements as we approached. The ship began to creak more and more as we began to move sporadically about like turbulence. Seems like we started our descent. Hope you can spend these next moments as best you can, Sam. I could feel my heart beating hard and fast. On approach, the ring of light became more blinding. It distorted itself, arrays of light and color I'd never seen before or ever would again. They appeared. I put my hand up to my chest in a vain, desperate hope to still my beating heart. Amid the rushing thoughts and emotions I was going through, something stuck out to me. Nathaniel was very calm for all this. Tell me, Nathaniel, of all the other reasons that others would be here, why are you here? There was a pause. The creaking of the ship, our only noise, as the sides began to come more clearly into view. I guess there's no harm at this point in our journey. I put myself here because I wasn't happy with who I was turning out to be. The hull was beginning to distance away from us. I couldn't tear my eyes away from what had been happening as the front of the ship continued to make steady progress into our descent. He had picked up my attention somewhat, another voice being a slight comfort and, well, what were to become my final moments. What do you mean? I mean, I came out into my adulthood just recently. I've struggled seeing what I would become, and over the last few cycles, I only see a mistake in my own reflection. What do you mean by that, Nathaniel? I mean, you don't seem like a mistake to me. He now had my attention. Fright took place right between my eyes as I wavered and put my attention on him. Sam, I don't know where you're from or what kind of parents you may have had, but my family and I, we all grew up poor. But we were close. Mom, Pa were good people. No, great people. Our community loved them and respected them, as did I. They raised me up good and well. It's only as I got older that I didn't fancy myself as the good child they brought up. Started distancing myself from others. I had no motivations, no desires. Couldn't bring myself to be the boy they had raised. And you seem to have a lot to say for someone who didn't want to interact with others. What's all this talk about not wanting to be good? The talking helps with how scared I am right now. My folks were a light in the dark for most others and taught me how to do that for others as well. I just didn't see a point anymore. Didn't enjoy it. Everything felt so hopeless and, that's just not right. I wasn't raised that way. My parents raised me better, and they don't need to see their son become this sad, wordless thing. The creaking became more pronounced as the deep thrum permeated the air around us. Was this the sound of the black hole? The ship began to quake, and yet I couldn't take my eyes off Nathaniel as he began to tear up and wipe his eyes. Did you ever think you might have just been depressed? I mean, you live in a bad solar system from the sound of it. And for that I'm deeply sorry, but this sounds like it may have just been depression showing up for you. He took his hands away and stared across from us, the tears now falling to the floor. No, I didn't. I may have just been a dang fool this whole time. There was a shudder that shook us so violently I looked back up. The hole had widened since I last saw it. The front of the ship had become smaller, while the rest of the ship behind us had become larger. We were past the horizon and into the worst of uncharted territory. We were not meant to know what occurred past this point. You know, Nathaniel, that might just make both of us fools, I said, outstretching my hand towards him. He grabbed it. At least we aren't alone. No, we sure aren't. It was nice to have met you, Nathaniel. He didn't reply. He simply smiled and nodded. Now he too could not look away from what was transpiring. The next events all happened quickly. Past the event horizon, our observable universe lit up in arrays of bright, colorful, spiraling streaks of light. Behind us, our path here had tunneled out, a small speck of light where our entire universe had been. The dilation of time and the Doppler effect overlaid. As if we were in a funhouse of mirrors, I could see what was about to happen from all sides of us. The future became a sight to be witnessed, a destination in sight that we would not escape from. No matter where we looked, all around us, every path led to the singularity, a light tunnel with a completely black center growing larger as we gained speed towards it. The bow of the ship compacted, the sound of the black hole itself becoming deafening amid the helpless screams of everyone on board as they all became spaghettified and crushed into oblivion. The ship groaning and giving way as chunks were torn apart. This all approached us quickly and slowly, our present and future, compiling all at once from either side of us. The weight of all my mortal worries gripped my legs and pulled as the other side of the ship crushed and tunneled out of view. My entire body stretched past physical limits into a singular strand that went outward and began to curve around. I'm unsure what gave way first as the blackness of eternity draped over my eyes. And with a shriek I'd never uttered before in my life, I awoke again, grasping and clutching over my entire person. Back here, back on the asteroid. My eyes watered as tears began to streak my face. Even now, recalling these events shake me to my core. I can't stop my hands from shaking as I record this. I have not slept. The darkness that envelops me when I close my eyes gives me the worst fear that I just couldn't shake. Nathaniel, did you survive as well? Was this all just a dream? It felt so unbelievably real. I hope beyond hope only the best for you. I don't think I'm ever going to forget you or this experience. The Watcher remains silent. I fight the urge to beat on the door. I was instructed not to wake her under any circumstance. Surely this could be an exception. Just what was going on? Between my shriek and my outbursts as I record even now, there's enough noise in the small home I would think to wake the dead. Yet still she remains silent. I only hope that she returns to the other side of our home so that I might ask my questions and, well, to not be alone. This was not at all what I had expected my first adventure to be like. To experience a black hole and live to tell the experience. I don't wish this on anyone or anything. There are really and truly things that we are not meant to, shouldn't know in our universe. Mom, Dad, I miss you both. I had thought talking would help calm me and get my thoughts out, but I don't feel any better after recalling all this. For posterity's sake, there's now a record of my trip. And with that, I'm gonna go lie down. I don't believe I will sleep. I simply wish to be caught when next I fall. This is Sam, signing off.